becomes an emancipated woman, has consented to a pre-arranged marriage?
Well, there was so much media interest in what I did and what I did not do. And I come from a society which is very traditional. And there was a military dictatorship here. So I was very concerned about not meeting people. I thought that if I met people or if I went out to parties, my name would be scandalized. And so I led a very reclusive life, so to say. And it came to either not marrying at all or having an arranged marriage. And I thought that one should have a roof over one's own head. And as a single woman, I was living in my father's house. My father had passed away. My brother had got married again. I didn't know what the future held. So I thought it was important to be married, to have my own home and my own family. And the only choice I had was either to have an arranged marriage or not to have a marriage. You can see that now, nearly 15 years later, in a modern society like England, if the Princess of Wales even talks to somebody in innocence, all kinds of innuendos are made. So you can imagine how much worse it would have been for me living in Eastern culture had such a thing happened.
Can you recall the very first meeting with your husband?
I was very nervous before I met him. And of course my whole family was there, my mother was there, my sister was there, my relatives were there, my aunt was there, my father's sister. And he came in and I thought he was very smartly dressed. And my friend whispered to me that, you know, sometimes people dress up to make a good impression, but you must always look at their shoes to see whether they really always dress well or they're putting on a show. So we both glanced and she said, oh, he seems to be very well dressed, and he was very charming. So I remember being taken in by that he was smartly turned out. But what really impressed me about him was the fact that he had a great sense of humor, and he made me laugh, and I hadn't laughed for such a long time. So he made me feel safe, he made me feel secure, and he made me really able to forget some of my worries.
Κρέμασαν τον πατέρα μου ξημερώματα 4 Απριλίου του 1979 μέσα στη φυλακή του Ραβαλπίντι. Ήμασταν έγκλειστες κι εγώ και η μητέρα μου η Νουσράτ σε ένα απομακρυσμένο κρατητήριο στη Σιχάλα όταν διαισθάνθηκα τη στιγμή του θανάτου του πατέρα μου. Ξέσπασα σε λυγμούς και κραυγές απελπισίας. Μείναμε αγκαλιασμένες με τη μητέρα μου ως την αυγή. Έτσι αρχίζει την αυτοβιογραφία της η κόρη της Ανατολής.
Would you mind recalling the agonizing dawn of April the 4th, 1979, as you do in your book, The Daughter of the East?
Well, I still tense up, although so many years have passed, when I think of that day. And it is one which will always remain scarred in my mind and in my soul. Every year when I go to my father's grave, I think of how young he was when he was so brutally killed. I remember when I went this time, and I'm 42, and I thought he was only 50. He was only 8 years older than I was when he was killed. And I remember just this morning of how he didn't even want to, when the High Court had sentenced him to death, he didn't want to appeal to the Supreme Court because he said that they have already decided what to do. Why prolong the agony? Let them do what they want to do. Why prolong the agony of being humiliated in a solitary death cell? And it was we, my mother and myself, who pleaded with him that for our sakes at least, and for the sake of the nation, he must appeal, and he did. So I think back to how courageous he was, to know that he faced death, and to welcome it for his principles, and for his honor, and for the honor of his country.
But there must be happy moments you shared with your papa. Tell me about
Very
them.
happy moments. I really look back on them and think of the warmth and the security he gave. I think of how wonderful and caring and considerate he was. I think of the sense of justice and fair play that he had within him, how he never discriminated amongst his children, how much pride he took in everything I did, whether it was sports or examinations or debating. I remember the hopes that he had in me, and I just think that my life was transformed because I was lucky enough to have a father like him. I don't mean in political terms, but I mean in terms of the fact that I was born a woman, and women are often rejected. Women are denied their rights. But my father was such a broad-minded person, such a revolutionary, that he gave his daughter self-confidence and dignity. And today I am what I am because of my father and not because of anybody else. It was my father who said the girl child should not be rejected.
Ζωή με αντιθέσεις σαν τη χώρα της, η ζωή της Benazir Bhutto. Ευτυχισμένα παιδικά χρόνια με τους πλούσιους μορφωμένους γονείς της και τα 3 αδέλφια της. Λαμπρές σπουδές, πολιτικές επιστήμες στο Χάρβαρντ και στην Οξφόρδη. Ηγέτης των αντιφρονούντων στο εξωτερικό. Το σκηνικό αλλάζει. Επιστρέφει και φυλακίζεται στο Πακιστάν από το καθεστώς του Ζία για 2 χρόνια. Πρωθυπουργός, η φυλακή πάντως μέρος της ζωής της. 2 χρόνια πίσω από τα σίδερα και ο άνδρας της για κρατικές μίζες. Ελεύθερος, ελήψη αποδείξεων.
You have stayed behind the bars for quite a long time. Are there any unforgettable incidents from that period of time?
Well, there are so many different places that I was arrested in. Sakhar jail, Landi jail, Karachi jail, Sehala police station, place to place. But it was not just being imprisoned that was bad. It was the solitary confinement. Today people who are in jail, they have fridges, they have televisions, they have radios, they have lots of papers and books to read, and they can pass their time. But when we were kept in detention, we were not allowed access to anything. And when I was in prison, there was nobody to talk to. There was nothing to read. I was allowed 1 newspaper, and I really had to go back into my thoughts, and I used to pray a lot to survive. My hair fell out, my skin became scaly, my eyesight deteriorated, I became extremely thin. And now when I see back and when I read about others, I see that it is a pattern that is repeated, that if one puts a human being in solitary confinement, whether it's in Africa or whether it's in Burma or whether it's in Pakistan, the symptoms are exactly the same of solitary confinement, with the hair falling out, the skin going flaky, then coming out of prison, and the jaw hurts from talking because one has not exercised the facial muscles because there was no one to talk to.
You know, in Greece, our Prime Minister's second wife, she's been accused of interfering with politics. And here in Pakistan, by reading the newspapers, your husband has been accused of interfering too in the politics. So is it unavoidable for the relatives of the Prime Minister to...
I don't know. Even in England, they say that the First Lady runs the country. So I think the spouse is always an easier target for the opposition. In my first tenure as Prime Minister, my husband and I led separate lives. He was not in Parliament. He lived in Karachi. I lived in Islamabad. And the reason was that we wanted to show that he had nothing to do with government. So we put up with the personal sacrifice of him living 1,000 miles away from me and denying ourselves companionship. But we found it made no difference, and that people still said that he ran the government. So we then thought, well, what's the use of denying ourselves and making the sacrifice? And so we decided it was more important for him to come out in the open politically. So he ran for elections, and he's been elected to the National Assembly twice. And now there's less criticism of his being involved in politics than there was when I was last Prime Minister. And the only reason is that since he is in politics himself, he can meet people who are in the political field, and he can answer the accusations for himself. So I think that as far as I am concerned, having a spouse who is a member of the Parliament has really helped give us 2 distinct identities. And it's also helped us personally because we all live as a family rather than being separated in 2 different cities and 2 different homes.
You're a woman